Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and Midnight is going into a beta testing period, probably the same day as you're watching this video. Beta realm should be going on live later tonight, which is going to be incredibly exciting for so many more players to be able to finally preview how some of these classes play during the beta testing period. A lot of you guys have been asking what class am I looking to main heading into Midnight, and definitely the current main that I play right now, Rogue, is still on my radar, but I'm still wondering if it's actually going to be good enough, since we didn't really see a lot of Rogue changes that we wanted to see during Dragonflight. Many players were also disappointed during the early works of Rogues during War Within, and I'm wondering if Midnight is still gonna leave this class in the dust for yet another expansion, though hopefully not. We did see some buffs towards the class of Rogue specifically that I think are going to be pretty massive, both with our tier sets as well as hero talents, which you did want to take a closer look at and go over exactly just how impactful some of these changes are going to be. Spoiler, these are actually looking really promising. With that being said, if you guys want to keep up with the regular class updates or for the Midnight beta, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Starting off, some of the new things we've seen about Rogue since my initial coverage is we got some new tier sets, and we actually know exactly what some of these tier set bonuses are going to be. Assassination 2 set bonus, garrote damage is increased by 30%, so big bleeds are going to be up there, and it also applies to weapon poisons, which is it's nice if you're going for a poison build. The first set, garrote's energy cost is reduced, but also mutilate, ambush, and patronize deal 25% more damage. The target's affected by weapon poison, so it basically just means since you're constantly poisoning enemies, 25% damage buff that's fairly guaranteed. This is overall actually a really good set. It is strong with better garrotes, mutilate damage, ambush damage, and patronize damage. All is going to be very noticeable. It is not the most exciting set, like it's not going to make you play a very specific build, but whatever you end up playing, it should be solid numerically. It opens up some big Fatal Knife AoE and bleed based gameplay in the future, so it gives you an opportunity to play into some of the newer talents that Assassination is getting as part of Midnight Update. The Outlaw Rogue tier set is going to be a 2-set bonus where Blade Rush damage is increased by 30%, and its damage to your primary target is increased by additional 25%, which is actually pretty solid. The first set, Blade Rush cooldown is further reduced by 6 seconds, and it increases your damage dealt by 5% for 8 seconds. This is a kind of a weird tier set, but Outlaw Rogues right now is very reliant off of the Blade Rush ability because it is in a bit of a situation where it doesn't get as much energy as it used to. So Blade Rush seems to be kind of like a mandatory talent at the moment, but with this talent you get a nice damage buff, which is solid, but also an amp window as well. This also helps because Outlaw Rogue plays into big cooldown reduction mechanics, which is still prevalent in Midnight, so that minute cooldown on Blade Rush can be reduced further down to like 45 seconds, if not 30 seconds. So this is something that you'll actually will gain benefits from pretty regularly, and it's overall pretty good. The Subtlety Rogue tier set 2 set, your finisher moves deal additional damage per combo point spent, which I guess it's fine on its own. The first set allows Shadow Blades to last 4 seconds longer and increase your attacks to deal an additional 6% damage as Shadow, which is probably the most passive one out of all of them. It's incredibly passive and to some degree boring because there's no like interaction with it. It's not like Assassination, which gets to play into a more nice physical damage build, or like a bleed build, or Outlaw Rogue, which basically gets to buff up some of their main core abilities and plays into cooldown reduction. It's just a raw damage increase. It's probably going to be good numerically, but it's definitely the least interactive one out of the three, which might... There are some concerns about subtlety in terms of cooldowns and managing that in Midnight, but it just feels like not a lot of effort was put into their tier set, and it makes me a little bit worried about subtlety going forward into Midnight, just a little bit if I'm honest. However, besides just the Rogue tier, we also did get some new additions to the hero talents of Deathstalker, Trickster, and Fatebound, and all of them are actually really good. Starting with Deathstalker, which to me is the most exciting one. First trait is kind of nuts in the new row. Precise Killer, critical strike damage bonus is increased by 20%. You now have crit damage scaling as a Deathstalker. This is awesome as there's a number of class talents and even spec talents to play around with critical strikes for both subtlety and assassination, which is pretty sweet. You also do have the Deathstalker Capstone of Darkest Night, which increases the damage of your Envenom or Eviscerate and also makes it a guaranteed crit, which means you can take advantage of this 20% bonus. This is awesome, and crit scaling for rogues I think is generally pretty good. Just allows for some real big bursty situations, and I'm a big fan of this specifically. You also get Quietus Celeris, where Deathstalker's Mark has the 30% chance to immediately consume a stack when applied. And the general point of the Deathstalker is to apply marks, consume them as quickly as possible, get yourself the capstone, and spend it as quickly as possible. So the faster you can consume these, the more capstones you can get, which is a huge damage increase. So you're just being able to randomly, whatever you apply the mark to, consume it. Just means you have to spend less finishers to get your capstone. This is overall a pretty decent gain overall. And the final trait is Mass Casualty, where Deathstalker's Mark will now cleave and do additional AoE damage. For Assassination, is based off of targets with Rupture, but for Subtlety, it's based off of whenever you use Black Powder. So now you have some AoE potential for Subtlety in particular, which is something that a lot of players wanted to see for Deathstalker, which remains to be pretty much single target focused rather than AoE focused. For Subtlety, there's still a bit of a weirdness with the Capstone and Eviscerate being the only way to activate the Capstone ability, which is not ideal in AoE. In some cases, it's just better just to spam Black Powder if you're hitting enough AoE targets, and you're basically just missing out on the Deathstalker component altogether from its Capstone. They really still got to improve it. Either way, the new set of talents is a massive improvement for Deathstalker. It does help reinforce to make the hero talent a lot more effective overall. Just needs a little bit work for Subtlety in general. Then we get Fatebound, which also got some brand new tools here, which are not all that exciting. Not all of them are exciting, but first one being Sometimes Lucky just gives you a higher chance of critical strike. It's good. Like, just secondary stats, but they're solid secondary stats. It's not bad. It's just, again, like, what can you do with it? It's just a passive bonus. The next is Controlled Chaos, which simply makes it a little bit less of, like, gives you less of a damage fall off whenever you lose your stacks of tails or your stacks of heads, which naturally is going to happen when you play around the Hand of Fate ability as part of the Fatebound Rogue playstyle. The final trait is Ravenhold Mint, where flipping heads increases damage further by additional 4%, and the damage on tails could also be further increased by 15. This is a brand new challenge that is there just primarily to tune heads and tails separately, and this can be used in order to make sure one buff does not get ahead of the other, which is really good. Overall, this set of changes makes the Fatebound playstyle consistent. It makes it play a lot better. Other major changes like the Capstone changes, where you don't need to lay on 7 heads or 7 tails. Just flipping a coin 7 times activates a capstone, makes this thing super consistent. Them removing a lot of that AoE limitation and damage reduction from, like, AoE, like if you are hitting multiple targets, you used to have your tail buff go down in value, but if you just hit a single target, that would increase in value. They cleaned up a lot of those bad talents and replaced them with some generic increases, which overall actually improves Fatebound consistency and makes me actually legitimately excited to play some Fatebound in Midnight. The final hero spec is going to be Trickster, and some of the new talents are going to be also kind of passive / generic. The first one is a phased debuff is a little bit more effective. Normally as Trickster, every few seconds, your basic combat ability will also hit the target with an Unseen Blade, doing immediate damage and putting a debuff on them called phased. While enemies are phased, they take 5% more damage from your attacks, and they cannot parry your abilities, which is super nice in some raid and PvE environments, but also pretty good in PvP as well. Then Hoodwink essentially just makes that phase debuff a little bit more effective, which is just a solid amp overall. Below that we have Flashing Steel, where Unseen Blade can now occur more regularly, so you can get more hits for Unseen Blade, and has a 25% chance to strike twice. This means more raw damage from Unseen Blades, but also an opportunity for you to build up coup de grace faster, because after 4 strikes with Unseen Blade, you get a coup de grace, which is just a more empowered version of an Eviscerate or Dispatch, depending on your spec. Consumes additional combo points, which deals more damage for Subtlety and has huge cooldown reduction benefits for Outlaw in particular. This overall, the trait itself is really good for just raw damage, but maybe really bad for tracking. However, maybe in the future they'll tune it so Trickster needs to be doing a lot less tracking for Unseen Blades, because you basically are trying to maximize how many Unseen Blades you can get to proc coup de grace faster and consume coup de grace without proccing too many of these Unseen Blades against the target. Last trait is going to be Clever Combatant. Shuriken Storm as well as Pistol Shot both have a high chance to crit, but also can proc the Unseen Blade effect. Normally Unseen Blade can only be proc with a single target ability, so for Subtlety, this is a nice rotational change where you can press Shuriken Storm in AoE. You are already encouraged to press a lot of single target abilities in AoE because they'll cleave AoE targets anyway, but with some of the changes they did to Black Powder and Shuriken Storm, it actually is worth pressing when you're hitting like 4 or 5 targets. So this is actually just going to be a really nice change, makes the rotational gameplay of Trickster a lot easier to handle, and for Outlaw, it's just a nice bit of crit damage amp, and it makes them with the crit specific talents that scale with critical strike off of one another a lot more effective. Overall, the changes we're seeing for Rogue so far are really good, and we'll see how they translate over on the beta period, but there are still some concerns to be wary of. And this is something that I'll probably discuss in a much closer detail, like over a couple of weeks of beta if we're not seeing too many Rogue changes, but definitely worth watching out some of the changes that I would love to see for class talents, the talent point economy and the spec talents, but the hero talents and the tier sets by themselves do look like a promising step forward. With that being said, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy this update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like, as I would very much appreciate it. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any midnight beta updates. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.